If you're watching this video for your homework, you don't necessarily need to do the tasks at the beginning, but if you're doing this video as a lesson at home, then we'll still go through the same tasks that we would normally do in class. So the first one is a starter spelling task. So if you pause the video and you handwrite this, but you can add to the Spelling Starters channel in the team. On you go. As S2, you voted to study Basking shark, and just like before, there is another information hunt lesson, but this time it's on Norman McCaig. There isn't a PowerPoint this time, you've just to find 5 interesting facts about Norman McCaig. So in this lesson, our aims are to understand what textual analysis is, to fully analyse the poem, and to complete a textual analysis assessment of the poem. It's really important that you've either watched or read through this PowerPoint before you do the assessment. Once we have completed the assessment, we will move on to look at how to write a critical essay and then hand in. But what is textual analysis? Well, it's very similar to RUI in that questions are on a text, but usually it is on a fiction piece of writing. Just like RUI, there's a focus on understanding, analysis and evaluation, but there is probably a slightly heavier focus on analysis of techniques. And in the textual analysis assessment you'll do on this, it would be analysis of poetic techniques that you would look at. But what sort of questions will you be asked? Well, you'll get different understanding questions. And understanding questions ask you to show your understanding of the main ideas of the poem. For all understanding questions, you do not need to write in sentences. Instead, you can answer in bullet points. But you must always aim to use your own words. That means if you're asked, for example, what did the shark do to the speaker at the start of the poem, you cannot write, he shoggled him. You actually have to show understanding of what shoggled might mean. And the number of marks equals the number of bullet points. So for example, you might be asked, what happens in stanza 1? And it's worth 2 marks. There's two bullet points in the answer. Speaker is out rowing in the water, he hits a basking shark. That would get you 2 marks. You might also be asked about audience and purpose. So the audience is the group of people that the poem is aimed at. And in order to work that out, I want you to think about the subject of the poem and the poet's message. You would give an answer, but remember you also need to give a reason for your answer. So for example, the question might be, who is the intended audience for this poem? And your answer would be people who are interested in whatever, and please don't say people who are interested in poetry, that's just too vague. Or it could be people who need to understand something. And then your second bullet point would be, I know this because. And you could refer to the text, either through a quotation or just by explaining what the text is about. The purpose then is to do with why the poem was written, and it links very well to the writer's message. Again though, you need to give a reason for your answer. And here's another example, what is the purpose of this poem? And your answer would be in 2 bullet points again. McCaig's purpose was to, whatever, I know this because. And again, you can just say he uses the phrase blah blah, or he writes about whatever, okay? A quotation or just a general understanding, both are okay. You might also be asked about the poem's themes. Now remember, the themes are the big ideas that run throughout this poem. One way to think of it, and one way to kind of have a more specific theme, is to think about what is the writer's message? What does he want you to think about? So those are the different types of understanding questions you might be asked. Moving on then, you will also get analysis questions, especially word choice, and we talked about this in class, but for those of you that weren't in class or can't remember, words are chosen because of their connotations, and connotations are the ideas you associate with a particular word. Think about the phrase decadent townie. That's a difficult one, okay? Because there are two main, very, very different denotations of the word decadent. But decadent here is an adjective, okay? He's a decadent townie. And it's important to think about what decadent means in this context. Then what you would do is you would say, this suggests, and just explain what it makes you think of. So in your S2 textual analysis, you would quote the word or the phrase, and you would explain what the word or phrase suggests. Okay, think about, why did McCaig use that word instead of a simpler word? Then you have analysis questions, and in particular, similes and metaphors. So a reminder, a simile is when you compare one thing to something else, making the comparison clear by saying like or as. A metaphor is when you compare one thing to something else, saying it is the other thing. When you analyse a simile or metaphor in S2, you just need to write down, well, you need to quote what the simile or metaphor is, and then just write down what it makes you think of. Now, when you're in S3, I'll show you a really specific way to do this, but in S2, it's just for me to understand, can you identify a similar metaphor? And do you understand the image that the writer was trying to create when he used that similar metaphor? You might also be asked about the mood and atmosphere of the poem. Okay, think about the feelings you get from the poem. Does the mood change at all? And how do you know? So think about, is the poem serious, happy, sad? Does it always stay the same? It's very closely linked to the speaker's tone. And finally, you'll be asked some evaluation questions. Right, that's to do with how effective a piece is. You'll be asked for your own personal response. You need to give a reason for your answer, and if you can, give evidence from the text. Now, this is not a review, okay? Link your response to the question. I don't want you to write, I think the poem was great and I give it 5 out of 5. Okay, the question will ask you something specific about how effective McCaig is in doing something, and that's what you need to answer. But remember, you do not have to write in full sentences. And that was it. So the next time you're in class, we will be doing this assessment. If you have any specific questions about the assessment beforehand, you can ask me through Teams. Otherwise, have a go.